Okay, welcome to this afternoon's drill. Today we'll be looking at the sledgehammer and the Hooligan or Hooligan tool. But before we start, we're just going to go through some OH&S issues and procedures. Please take note of the exits to the building. So we have one here at the front, have two at the back. If there's an emergency, please move to one of those exits in an orderly manner. The other things you could note is there is a bathroom to the right if you need to go there during the day. And also please take notice of the trip hazards around the room. There's a few things on the floor, so if you have to get up and do some practice, please make sure you take note of those. Okay, the aim of today's drill is developing new skills at work, improving efficiency and effectiveness of door entry procedures, especially with the Hooligan and the sledge axe, and also learning to meet safety procedures, so how to use these door entry tools safely. Okay, the learning objectives. So hopefully by the end of the drill we should learn about the Hooligan and the sledge axe, learn how to use them safely, learn the most effective and also efficient way. So especially at a job, we do need to be able to use them efficiently. So instead of spending a lot of time trying to open a door, if we can do it efficiently and effectively, we can get in faster and the outcome should be better. We'll also have a quick look at the maintenance of the tools and how we look after them. Okay, we'll go through some of the safety PPE required. So when we're using these tools, firefighters should wear suitable eye protection. So especially when you're opening a door, there's a strong chance of splinters which can get into the eyes. Visors on the helmet, a natural helmet, can also help prevent eye injuries. Long sleeve work shirts to stop splinters in the arms, long trousers, firefighter over trousers, boots and gloves. I'll just quickly pause this and get the phone. Okay, sorry about the delay. So as we get back to it, safety PPE, so we talked about the helmet, long sleeve work shirt, trousers, firefighter overalls or over trousers, firefighting boots are a must, so you have the steel cap at the top for safety and gloves as well. Okay, so we're actually having a look at the Hooligan and the sledge axe. We'll look at what parts and what components actually make them up. So we'll start with the Hooligan or Hooligan, depending on what you want to call it. So we've got a little diagram over here on the whiteboard. So you can see that there's few different components to it. So if we start at the bottom, we have the pinch head. So it's basically in a shape which we can use to lever to get floorboards up. We can knock hinges off doors. So it's very useful under the tool. And due to the slight curve in it, we can also use it for leveraging. The large part here is the shaft. Shaft is also crucial for leveraging as it gives you a certain amount of distance between the head and the bottom, which will allow the fulcrum at the top to get you manoeuvrability and give you a mechanical advantage. Also key to that mechanical advantage is angle between the adze head, which is up top here, and your adze blade and the pike. So if we look at the top, the adze head is nice and flat on one side, which is crucial when we use it with the sledge axe, as it gives a nice firm surface so we can drive it into the door that we're going to open. The adze blade is nice and sharp and slightly curved and comes to a sort of pointed edge which allows you to get it into the side of the door and it gives you some leverage in order to open it. And finally the pike can be used in multiple ways, which we'll go through soon, but it's definitely useful for knocking things like the key barrel out or even just getting a gap, getting a wedge in there and using it that way. So that's the Hooligan or Hooligan tool. Alright, so we'll go on to the sledge axe. So as we can see up here, we've got the sledge head, which is the top part here, which marries up with the Hooligan tool. So we'll use this to drive the Hooligan tool in, so we can get a bite and get that manoeuvrability. We've got the axe blade on the side, so obviously we can use that for cutting, but we can also use that to try and create a gap. So if we're using both tools at once, we can use this as a wedge and then use the Hooligan in a combination with it. And finally, we have the rubber handle for grip. So especially when swinging this, it's important that you have a good, firm, safe grip so we don't lose control and cause injury. So those are the two components. Are there any questions about the makeup of either of the two equipment?
No.
Excellent. All right, so we'll move right along into safety requirements. So as part of fire and rescue, one of the most crucial factors when using any tool is safety. So when attempting to insert the Hooligan tool into the door frame, we should not be swinging the tool like an axe. So doing so can inflict severe injury on the operator or person standing by. So we'll see a lot of people tempted to, when they're getting in the door, swing, lift it up, and as you can see, we lose control, and when that's the case, there's a strong risk of injury. So when we're using the Hooligan, we're placing it in safely and in a controlled manner. Alright, we exercise caution when opening an inward opening door in case there is fire or a person collapsed on the other side. So if we decide to use the door and pop it without control, there's a good chance that if someone's behind, we will injure them further. So a way of controlling that is we use a pocket line, tie it to the handle, and when we open the door, it will then be a controlled opening and hopefully minimise damage to anyone that could be behind. Okay, so when swinging the sledge axe, we should ensure that all persons are clear of the area. And we ensure the area is clear of any obstructions. So catch the axe, be aware of the area that you're swinging, and be aware of people that could be in the backswing, and the fact that the blow may deflect. So when using it, we should be aware of our surroundings, be aware of the other firefighter who will often be holding the Hooligan tool, and then making sure there is nothing above or below which can catch onto the axe, and then swinging in a controlled manner. Okay, it's important to secure your footing. If we are opening a door and have our feet too close together, when we're swinging the axe, there is a good chance that you hit, it'll either deflect, or you yourself will fall back. So getting a nice firm footing with feet apart is crucial to get a good firm hit and minimise the chance of injury. We should remove all persons not involved in the operation, including other emergency services, personnel, bystanders, or residents of the building. We should pay attention to the hands and fingers of the person holding it. So, for example, if somebody is holding the Hooligan tool too far up, someone uses a sledge, there is a good chance you'll get a crush injury on the fingers. So being aware of where your hands and fingers are at all times, and remembering to wear gloves just in case there is an accident. Okay, more often than not when we're using these tools, we're using them to gain entry to a premise which is on fire. So when we go into a volatile situation, before we think about opening the door, we need to make sure we have a charge line of 38 behind us. This will help create a safer atmosphere for when the door does open. It's also crucial to wear BA or CABA in any dangerous atmosphere. So before you actually start preparing to open the door, CABA on and making sure it is nice and safe. Okay, so what we're going to do now is go over the maintenance of the tools. So to start with, for the sims, when we get it, we'll make sure there are no loose parts. So the crucial, this is the head of the axe, which can often become loose if it's old or been damaged or dropped too hard. We're looking at the handle to make sure it's on firmly, make sure there's no discoloration. Another crucial thing is just a visual inspection. So are there any cracks? Is there any signs of aging? Is there any damage or denting to the actual axe head? Similar for the Hooligan tool, we want to make sure the axe head is on firmly. We want to make sure there is no cracking or signs of trauma to the tool. Make sure that nothing is bent improperly, colouring is right, and if there's dirt or any sort of foreign substance on it, that we clean it. So we can use warm soapy water, use a cloth, making sure it's dry. So it's crucial that these tools are dry when using them because we don't want them slipping out of our hands, which can cause injury. Alright, so what we're going to do is, we will go through a few practical scenarios, but before we do, there's a few different things that people don't really consider when using these tools. So one of these is drop bar entry. So it's very easy to sort of use the tool to lever a door open, but if there is a drop bar behind it, if you're levering, you're pushing against the drop bar, which won't actually open. So what we have is a video which we can watch, which helps explain this situation. Okay, I can just pause it there. So basically we see the drop bar secured through this side of the door. So what we're doing is we're knocking out the support to the drop bar. In this case, they're using the pipe to knock out the bolts holding it up. So if we have a bolt here, using the Hooligan sledge axe, driving through the bolt, pushing it through, which will hopefully dislodge the drop bar behind it. See here, we've now changed the side of the tool we're using. We're using the adze blade, which gives us greater surface area as we're pushing through. Okay, you can also hear the safety commands being used. Hit, drive, making sure that each firefighter knows is rolling. Okay, so that took a minute and 7 seconds to get through.
We started with conventional forward entry for a couple of reasons. One is
Okay, so we skip through this part. We can actually see what the drop bar looks like from the inside.
we're looking at the inside of the door again. This one with the half-inch steel drop bar. We're starting conventionally, and you can see the adze being set behind the door. If you notice how much flex and give there is in this frame, that's because of the stick frame construction that we're seeing here. You won't see that much flex when you're in brick or concrete type buildings, and you actually get more damage transferred into the door. So we're moving up high and going back in conventionally above the drop bar. Now that we felt it and we're running outwards, we're just going to give it one more run conventionally and see if we can overcome and bend that steel out of the way. Even though this was half-inch steel, we still bent it out of the plumb, probably 2 to 3 inches, and could have overcome it in a different situation. Once we feel that it's steadily in place, we go to attacking the mount again. We're on the lock side mount again, which is important, and we go back and forth between both bolts trying to drive the mount off or loosen it up. Again, you'll see this mount didn't fall fully off, which is pretty common, but it did weaken the gap of the door and give us a lot more room to work. As we're driving these bolts through, there are times that the bouncing of that mount might just pop this bar completely out. It's important anytime we're doing Irish work like this.
It's got from the outside, it's all right.
That's right. Okay, so as you can see, as we hit the bolts on the other side of the door, we're seeing the drop bar shift, and eventually the bracket, which is holding it up, gets shifted out, the drop bar falls down, and allows you to gain entry. We'll just quickly move forward to that part of the video.
It's important anytime we're doing Irish work like this that we go back and forth between conventional and driving bolts, which is what we're doing right now. Now we have a very large gap in between the door and the frame, and we're able to visualize that drop bar that's in place. We're able to keep one bad pry on the Hooligan, the other comes in with the axe.
Okay, so you see from this, we've got enough leverage to get the door open enough that we can get the sledge axe through, and then simply using the sledge axe to lift it up underneath the drop bar, and once that's the case, it lifts up, over the bracket and basically allows you to get entry. So the thing about the drop bars, they can be made of different materials: wood, aluminium, steel, and depending on the flex of the material, often governs how easy this method is to use. So for example, if it's hardened in place, you might get less flex, it's harder to get the axe inside this wedge. So we've got to make sure, if it's a harder material, that we get these bolts out much further to get more sort of wiggle room and get us more room to get the sledge axe in. Okay, so that's the sort of method which isn't commonly seen, but it's a good one to know. And the other one is using the Hooligan tool at a car fire. So often firefighters have the problem of getting the bonnet open, or if they do open the bonnet, you get a whole lot of oxygen rush into the fire and can cause the fire to flare up. So a different method is, instead of actually opening the whole bonnet, we'll just open a section of the bonnet, which allows us to get the hose in there, bounce water off the hot surfaces causing steam. Knowing that steam, water to steam, every litre of water turns into 1,700 litres of steam, which will help us put out the fire much quicker. So we'll look at an example of this as well.
Hello everybody, Travis Calvin, firefighter with Robertson Fire Department. Today we're going to talk about how to extinguish in different ways and scenarios to put out a car fire if it's an engine compartment. So the videos that we've been seeing when we've been training on using and whatnot, a lot of people like to go right at this and open up the grill to get to the little wires that are locking mechanism in the hood by doing a spin, which is great in a scenario like this where the car is not on fire, but if it's smoky, you can't see the wires, you're just taking a shot in the dark, hoping that you get lucky. And also you're putting yourself either by being bent down or on a knee right in front of the bumper, and we all know that we need to stay at 45 if at all possible, so that the bumper doesn't go flying at us. Another thing that we've been seeing is people like to videos of taking out the headlights. We tried that a few times. It doesn't seem to get much water into the engine compartment, especially if it's deep seated in the back here. So what we'll do first is I'll show a quick, easy way of getting the initial attack down on the engine compartment, and then thereafter we can, after we've got the fire mainly knocked down, we can show you how to open up the hood for overhaul. So the best way I've seen, and in my experience, is called rolling the hood. So you just take part of your Hooligan, you snap it down, and you just reach down with your shoulder, lift up on it, and we'll make a nice open area where it lifts up the whole dash, and that will give the person on the nozzle a nice, easy way to shoot in water on top of all the engine compartment, where they can get all the deep-seated spots, and then thereafter we can open up the hood. So again, you just find a spot about 60 degrees up in the corner. You're still at a 45-degree angle, so you're in the safe spot.
Okay, if we just stop there for a second, we can see he's actually made a slight error. So when he's driven the pike into the bonnet, he's probably done it a little bit too far forward. So what you want to do is get it a little bit closer to the corner, which makes it much easier to leverage the tool and get that small opening. If you go too far, where he sort of landed about here on the bonnet on the other side, if you're doing that, when you're lifting up, you're sort of getting a bit of a bell or a curve, and it won't actually allow you to get a line of hose in there. So if we roll it forward, we might see this is the case.
Too far.
Okay, and the other issue here is because he's so far in, when he's leaning over the tool, the problem is as that bonnet lifts up, you now run the risk of having flames come up and hit you from underneath. So if you are going to use this method, you want to make sure you're hitting near the corner, and then as you're leaving the tool, stand to the side of the car, not putting your head over the top, which means that when it does float up, you're not going to have the risk of burn. So if you stand to the side, getting your hands away from the bonnet, using the leverage of the tool, you'll get a much safer and more effective outcome.
Here, you can see, you can get pretty much anywhere you want to inside the vehicle with the
if we stop it there, we can see the opening, which is enough to get a branch in there. And then basically once you're doing that, you're getting a jet, hitting water off the top here, off the bonnet, which will then steam up, drop down, and hopefully put out the bonnet fire. So this is a good method, but obviously once that's done, you will still want to get the whole bonnet open it up, make sure there is no evidence of any continuous fire. Okay. Alright, so what we're going to do now is go through some demonstrations on how we're actually going to use these tools. So what we'll do is we'll get you to work in pairs, and we'll have a look at both an inward and an outward door. So Angus, you want to get up first? Okay, so when we're using an outward door, or an inward door, an outward door in this case, we want to make sure that the door doesn't swing open and hit us. So obviously we're not going to stand from this side, but we're going to open up and injure ourselves. We'll be working from this side, so making sure the tool is in a position where it's not going to injure us. So the other thing about opening doors, a lot of the time we want to be able to re-secure it. So the closer we use the tool to the actual lock, the less chance of damage and the greater effect the tool has. So the tool is most efficient when we're closest to the lock. So that's often seen by the lock casing here. So you want to get the tool either just in below or just above. And then we have a few different methods. So initially we can get in and get it just in below. And as you can see, we want to get a bite. So in this case, we won't do it properly, but if Angus, if you got the sledgehammer, what we would be doing is we would have one person holding it here, and we would get called hit, and then once it was kind of bite, you might say drive to get it in. And then we have two options. We can use the tool outwards to lever to try and pop it. As you'll see will happen quite often is the tool will just slip out. So the most effective and efficient way is to get the tool in there, get it in there, and then either lever up or lever down. So this way we're using the greatest mechanical advantage of the tool and will allow the door to open quicker. Another different method is the lock barrel. So we can use a different part of the Hooligan tool. So we can use the pike, we can put it through the lock barrel, and once again I'll get the second firefighter, making sure everything is safe. Hit. We would hit it, hopefully knocking out the lock barrel, which will then allow us to open the door nice and safely. The only danger of this as well is if we do manage to hit the lock barrel all the way through, there is a risk of fall onto an injured person on the other side. So it can be quite useful at factories or that sort of scenario, but more often than not, if we're using the leverage of the tool, it allows us to open it and hopefully have any sort of debris come this side of the door. Another method, we can use pinch head. So we'll do the same thing, get as close to the lock as we can. We'll go hit, and then we'll eventually drive. What we'll do is, as we're hitting, we're slowly getting the tool deeper and deeper into the crack of the door. And as we do it, the tool will move around, and so we get enough bite, and then if we push back forward on it, hopefully the door will once again pop open. So if we reposition to an inward opening door, which we can go over here, so just grab that. Alright, so as we move over to this door, we can see that when this door would open, this is where we have the greatest chance of hitting somebody on the other side of the door. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a controlled opening, and the best way to do that is by using the pocket line. So by simply threading the pocket line through the hole, we can get a loop, you can get around the handle, pull tight, and we can get a firefighter to hold it as we attempt the opener. So Angus, if I get you to hold this for me, please. Alright, so now you can see that when the door does open and it does pop, we will have controlled opening. Alright, so a similar technique for this one. So As we come to the door, we can see we've got the slight framing instead of directly in front, it's to the side. So the same thing, we're getting the tool, getting in there with the sledge axe, making sure our hands are nice and clear, getting our body in a safe position as well, and then levering up, down, or out. So making sure we've got that, and then once it does pop open, we have that control opening. So the other method we could use also is to knock out the hinges. So if the door had hinges on an inward opening, we can use the bottom of the tool, the pinch, use it onto the door, and same thing, driving down or using the pike to get the hinge from the bottom and pulling the pins out. Okay, so we'll get you let go of that, Angus. Alright, any questions with that method? No?
No.
All good? Alright, so what we might do is we might go out and give a attempt of those different methods, and then we'll come back in and assess how we've gone. Okay, finally to wrap it up, so once we've actually made entry into the door, we need to be able to make sure that the tools are disposed of safely. So once the door is open, we've got the hose going through, especially if it's a house fire. We want to make sure the tool is off to the side and make sure the pike adds blade is facing down so no one's going to step on it and risk injury, and away from the door so it's no longer a trip hazard. Once that is the case, we know that we can access it easily, or if we're taking it inside, we'll often leave the sledge axe in a stalling position, and we might want to use the Hooligan tool inside. But we want to make sure that it's easily accessible, easy to find after the job is finished. So to sum up what we've learned, so we've learned how to open doors both inward and outward. We've also gone through some of the safety procedures and looked at some of the efficient ways to do it. We've looked at cars, we've also looked at what to do if there's a drop bar. So what we're going to do now is quickly ask if there's any questions or anything else you want to know, any other types of doors, and I'm happy to answer that. Any questions?
How would you use it on a roller door?
It's a great question, Di. On a roller door, the easiest way to open it is to actually get the roller off the hinge. So sometimes it's as easy as getting the adze head underneath the roller door and just flipping it off the roll, off its hinge, and then once it's off its hinge, you can actually then pull the door out and it will actually unravel. Alternatively, if it's a fire, it might not be the best option because if you open up the whole roller door, you're going to have too much oxygen rush through and you might actually make fire conditions worse. So in that case, we'll use a different tool in the truck. We might use a power saw, create a nice little triangle which we can access and limit the amount of oxygen going through to the fire. Any other questions? Okay, excellent. Thank you for taking part in the drill. What I'll do is I'll get you guys to fill out some review forms and see what went well, what didn't, and yeah, thank you for taking part.
Thanks.